Commodore, my 64, my Commodore 64.
Hi there, and welcome to a Let's Type episode from the Commodore 64 Appreciation Society. This is a series where I reach back into the past and type out a program from an old computer magazine, and then when I finish typing it in, I play it. June 1984 was a busy time. Daniel LaRusso was perfecting the fine art of household chores as martial arts training. The Ghostbusters were redecorating hotel ballrooms with unlicensed nuclear accelerators, and Gremlins, they were getting wet and multiplying like mad. Man, that was a good month for movies. Meanwhile, when I wasn't spending my allowance at the theater, 12-year-old me was hard at work typing programs out of magazines, and the selection was incredible. Home computer sales were booming, and publications like Compute's Gazette, and Ahoy were teaching us how to program while also delivering genuinely great games and utilities. The June 1984 issue of Compute's Gazette is a perfect example, and it was packed. 4 arcade-style games, 4 educational and home applications, plus a stack of cool tech demos and utilities, all for $2.50. It's hard to overstate just how much value these magazines delivered. The Frantic Fisherman is one of the games from that issue, and it's the one we'll be typing in and playing today. This one was suggested by a viewer, an excellent pick. And as always, if there's a type-in you remember from back in the day, let me know in the comments. Alright, enough talk, let's start typing. Frantic Fisherman was written by David Lacey, and it's all about a fishing trip that goes very, very wrong. Instead of a peaceful afternoon in a boat, our fisherman suddenly finds himself dealing with a threatening thunderstorm and a school of hungry sharks. Fortunately, our frantic fisherman came prepared. With an umbrella to stay dry and an oar pressed into service as a weapon, he's ready to fend off sharks and avoid becoming lunch. Honestly, the idea of beating up sharks with a bat is completely unhinged, and I'm absolutely on board. The game itself is a fairly hefty one. It starts with about 40 lines of BASIC, most of which are devoted to setting up a pretty slick Petsky intro screen. After that, it's nothing but data statements. The first 60 or so lines define the sprites, and then we get hit with roughly 200 lines of machine code. That is a lot of numbers. As usual, I'm very thankful for Compute's automatic proofreader, which helps catch mistakes as I type. This is the first version of the proofreader, released in 1984, and while it's helpful, it's not quite as rock solid as the improved version that arrived in 1986. One of the big limitations of this early proofreader is that it can't detect transpositions. It looks at all the characters in a line and then calculates a value from them, but it doesn't care about the order. With normal basic code, spotting a transposition is usually pretty easy, like in this example. After entering this line, the proofreader gives me a 46, and then if I change the letters in print, I still get a 46. Annoying, but it's easy to see and fix. But when you're typing thousands of numbers, it's a lot harder to find. Mixed in among all the type-ins in this issue is a really interesting article about the future of video games. They interviewed a wide range of developers and publishers, and some of the insights are fascinating in hindsight. The folks at Infocom, for example, felt that graphics and sound were largely irrelevant to storytelling. They saw text adventures continuing to evolve the way they already had, through incremental improvements in vocabulary size and parser intelligence. I am not entirely convinced on that one. Sierra Online, on the other hand, imagined a future built around recognizable characters. They had just released BC's Quest for Tires and believed humor and familiarity would be key as games moved into the mainstream. They absolutely nailed this one. Licensed games are still everywhere and familiarity is very important. Electronic Arts, fresh off publishing Seven Cities of Gold, envisioned a future where increasingly powerful computers could model complex systems, like pre-colonial North America, and let players explore them. That prediction also aged remarkably well. And then there's Don Bluth, the creator of Laserdisc games like Dragon's Lair and Space Ace. He saw the future as one dominated by, well, more Laserdisc games. He was partially right. Laserdiscs were hugely popular, just not for games. It's easy to look back and smile at some of these predictions, but I think it's safe to say that no one in 1984 could have imagined the sheer vastness and sophistication of the video game industry today. Frantic Fisherman is an interesting game for a code spotlight because, well, the basic code here isn't actually doing much. Almost the entire basic section is devoted to displaying a title screen and loading data before handing everything off to machine language. All of the gameplay, sound, and logic lives there instead. But the setup for that handoff is pretty interesting and worth a closer look. Let's dig in, starting at line 4. This is a pretty common trick, and it's doing some serious system level work. This tiny line is reserving memory for the sprite data that gets loaded later by capping how much memory BASIC is allowed to use. By default, BASIC's memory runs up to A1000. That's A000. Within that space, BASIC stores the program, allocates variables, and keeps all of its housekeeping data. The bigger the program, the more memory it uses. The problem is, BASIC has no idea that we're about to load a big chunk of sprite data, and in its normal operation, it could eventually start overwriting it. That feels unlikely in this particular case, but this line acts as a safety measure. It tells BASIC to stay in its lane. It lowers BASIC's memory limit from 8000 down to 3C100, 3C00, effectively reserving everything above that for the sprite data. The CLR that follows wipes any existing variables and forces BASIC to rebuild its memory pointers, making sure the new memory boundary actually takes effect. That avoids any weird collisions later on. It's kinda like clearing the room before the band comes in to set up for the party. The next line calls a subroutine that loads the sprite data into the memory we just freed up, and then loads the machine language. So why go to all this trouble to free up space for the sprites but not the machine language? Well, it's because the machine code starts at C1000, C000, which is already safely out of BASIC's reach in the first place. And that's pretty much the story here. BASIC sets the stage, loads the assets, and then gets out of the way so the real game can run. Cool, right? Phew, that was a lot of data. It's taken me almost 2 hours, but I'm finally at the end and I'm ready to stop typing and to start beating up some sharks with a bat. Okay, saved. This is definitely one of the bigger ones that I've typed in. 40 blocks is 10K. There's still lots of memory left on the 64, but that's a lot of code. I feel confident that it's going to work, mostly because of the automatic proofreader, but running it for the first time is still always a bit nerve-wracking. Oh, and sometimes for good reason. Damn, I hate seeing that. Hopefully I just missed a line. But that's starting to feel unlikely. I've been checking each line of the program and I haven't found any discrepancies yet. If I get through to the end without a problem, that means I'll need to review each line of data, looking for an error that wasn't caught by the proofreader. Yep, looks like I'm off to do a code review. Well, that was fun, but I found the error, and it was indeed a transposition problem. The problem was in line 50154. I had a 1 where a 2 should be and a 2 where a 1 should be. To the automatic proofreader, the lines are identical, but obviously it would have been a problem if left alone. But it's taken care of now, and hopefully the program runs. Come on, come on. And sweet, we have victory. Well, kind of. The title screen is messed up. No matter how hard Compute tried, the listings were sometimes a bit confusing for bits like this. But fortunately, it should be a pretty easy fix. Let's do that now. Counting down the lines, this should be 120. And yeah, you can see where the space is missing. A quick fix and... nice. And now for the bottom part. The error looks to be in line 170, and yeah, we're missing a space here. Oops, I removed a semicolon to help with debugging the line, and now I just have to put it back in. Perfect. I think we should have a working game now. Now that it's fixed, what a great title screen. Clever use of Petsky always looks so nice. Okay, let's see what we have here. Take that, Jaws. Our fisherman sure looks jaunty in his yellow clothes. Okay, so the greater and less than symbols move me to the different sides of the boat, and the space bar is the action key. If a shark is coming, it swings the bat. If a raindrop is falling, it lifts the umbrella. Very simple controls, very nice. And speaking of raindrops, look at the size of that thing. I feel like the umbrella is less about staying dry and more about preventing a concussion. Gotcha. The gameplay seems kinda stuck in a rut here. Almost as if the randomization isn't working right. Also, this is the slowest skill level, and is it ever easy? But I guess that's how difficulties are supposed to work. The function keys allow us to change the speeds. Let's try amping this up a bit. Okay, now we're talking. This is the fastest skill level, or what you get when you press F7. And to be honest, it's a lot more enjoyable. But it still seems to be suffering from the randomization problem. It seems to get stuck in various patterns. It's a bit of a shame too, because the mechanics and premise are really cool. It has a similar vibe to simple mobile games like Flappy Bird. Extremely simple mechanics, but satisfying addictive gameplay. This might actually be a bit too simple, and I feel like I might be able to play forever, especially with free lives awarded every 2,000 points. But honestly, this makes it kind of perfect for a type-in. Simple enough to understand, and easy to imagine improving. If I were tinkering with the game, I think the first thing I'd fix is the randomization, and then after that, I think it would be nice to ramp up the difficulty. Maybe it could increase steadily. As it is right now, it's just a bit too easy. Another fun addition could be to add a decoy fish or something, kind of like in Bank Panic when a good guy appears. In that case, shooting him is the wrong thing to do. That kind of feature would add a bit of difficulty and variability, and a little variability would be good. There are no doubt other changes that could be made too. If you're up to the challenge and make some changes, let me know. I'd love to see them. All in all, the Frantic Fisherman has a really strong core, nice graphics, great controls, and fast gameplay, and it makes for a fantastic type-in. But, in my opinion anyway, it's just missing a bit of polish to make it a great game. But still, credit where credit is due. David Lacey did a solid job with this one, and as always, thanks to Compute Gazette for publishing it. And I'll admit that beating up sharks with a bat is kind of a rush. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like or subscribing. And if you have any memories of the Frantic Fisherman, Compute's Gazette, or any other type-ins, please share them in the comments. Hope to see you again.